Potter's House Digital Learning Video 1, Take 413. Pushkin the cat greets digital learners in all states, but specifically the Potter's House 8th grade. This video is made for parents, for students, and for those lucky few who will still be watching these videos 60 years from now, wondering how we did it. I wish you a good morning. Happy Monday. Bit strange because it's actually Sunday for me, but you'll be seeing it on Monday. I thought it'd be appropriate to look like a teacher on the videos at least once. So I thought dress code would be a good idea in case you need a little bit more relevance to your learning day. Here's a hat for a sports league that is currently not in action. Hope you're coping well with your science nonfiction present. Glad we read Fahrenheit 451 because it seems like the future is now here. Just wanted to send you a little video to tell you that I'm alive. I hope that you're alive as well. I'd imagine last week gave you a bunch of opportunities to love your families, be kind to yourselves, work out some anger, sadness, and some humor as well. Personal changes in my life. I see my cat more often. I began writing, or I guess continuing, the novel that I was working on for the last 2 summers. I wrote 70 pages in 3 days. It's amazing how much creativity and how much time we have available to do something that we want to do and that is very creative as well. Challenge you to make some songs, make a dance, write poetry. What else? Come up with a new game, invent a language. There's so many possibilities out there. On the other side, I've been pretty isolated from people for a few days now, and while I do talk to people through FaceTime and phones, it has created some different life circumstances. I'm sharing this because I'm sure you're realizing that this is affecting you too. So, you're not alone. I find myself coming up with weird songs to sing, and you're like, you just started realizing that? Good point. But it's also kicked up a notch ever since the world has changed. Few things to think about for the Google Classroom this week. I try to get better at it every day. I've never used it until Tuesday. So I've got a week in. I appreciate those of you who are trying to complete your assignments, even when it's confusing. My goal is to be clear. So this video is meant to show you some of the papers that you will need this week. Let's start with reading. Alrighty, we're coming on over. Thought we'd go back to some Greek myths this week. Here is a sheet that you were given on Friday. It is called Icarus and Daedalus. Don't fly too close to the sun. Some of you might be a little worried because you're like, I wasn't here on Friday and I never picked up the packet. What do? That's a good point. There's a couple of options. You could go on Google and type in the myth of Icarus and you would find it. Or you could call a friend and they could read this paper to you. Or you could say, Mr. Grell, this first video was so interesting. Please make another and read the story to me. And I would be glad to do it. Let's move on. A little later in the week, on Wednesday, you'll be reading this story. It's called Palm Sunday. How interesting. You might have forgotten that Easter is still planned for this year. Palm Sunday, about a family in Egypt based on a true story. Thinking about writing this week, you've got an essay to write. Now, hear me out. I know, even before we left in the classroom learning, that I gave you all the lessons that I needed for you to write an awesome essay. You can still be confused about some things, but realize you have all the tools you need to get the essay done. And not just get it done, but to write with passion and to write with some sort of fascination as well. On Friday, learning with Grell is going to look a little different. And so it'll be more of creative writing and a little bit of a lighter load. You will need this sheet, written by the icon, Mr. Boy, when he was in first grade, I believe. It says, "My life as a waste paper basket." Wow, what an interesting creative metaphor. I'll have some ideas for how you could write on Friday. Finally, let's talk about social studies. You'll need the only two papers I passed out. One looks like this. That, my friends, is Andrew Carnegie, an immigrant who went from rags to riches. You'll be reading about a woman named Mother Jones who helped child workers gain rights. You'll be reading about John Muir. Technically, we did that at the beginning of the year with national parks. And you'll be learning about a civil rights activist named W.E.B. Du Bois, or Du Bois. Something else you'll need is this packet, Progressivism. Specifically, you'll be filling out the people's heads. There are some notes. It says, Mother Jones, what's wrong in America? I'll ask for you to put 2 notes down for what she thinks is wrong. It also says what reforms she achieved. I'll ask you to put 2 notes down for how she made America a better place. If you see this screen and you're thinking to yourself, I don't have that packet, the good news is you could find a piece of lined paper or a Google Doc. You could make these boxes and you don't even have to draw the faces. That's how we solve that problem. Alrighty, I think that's basically all that I have for you today. I'll end on one serious note. The virtue of the week is empathy. Last week's was adaptability, and ways that I had to adapt. I had to adapt to learning how to not only be okay with silence, but actually thrive in it. I had to learn how to adapt to my friends saying no to me. To be honest, I wanted to get together with some people, whether or not I was supposed to. And sometimes I asked if I could see some of my friends, and some said no. And I said, okay, that makes a lot of sense. I'm glad you're taking your health and the world seriously. This week's virtue is empathy. And if you haven't learned anything this year, my hope is that you walk away with greater skills of empathy. I believe this whole year has been a lesson in empathy. We read most of the Diary of Anne Frank. If you think about it, the life you're living right now is extremely similar to what Anne Frank was going through. Dwelling with the same exact people every day, not really being allowed to go outside very much, not being very free, and yet realizing the opportunities that she still had. So, throughout this week, I'm going to learn how I can feel the pain and experience the feelings of our healthcare providers who are making our world a more stable place. I'm going to think about what it feels like to be you, living in your family and trying to complete assignments on a computer. And I'm going to continue to read, and I'm going to continue to write my story and learn how I'm just like the characters I'm reading. I wanted to let you know, 8th grade, that I do miss you. This is a really surprising circumstance to be in, but I'm glad that I got to be with you for so long. So now when we send Google messages to each other, I can place a face to the writing. Be healthy, stay hopeful, and I'll talk to you later.